The blue-green world of New Saren hung like a jewel in space, its crystal-clear oceans reflecting the light of twin suns. For 300 years, the Vellani had lived peacefully on this world, mining rare crystals from the ocean floor and sending them back to their home colonies. They had never known war. They had never needed to dot. Elder Scientist Kickstall pressed his webbed hands against the communication console as warning lights flashed red throughout the colony ship Peaceful Current. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, he could see the dark shapes approaching. 12 massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. "The Corvin Armada," whispered his assistant, her gills fluttering with fear. "They're really here." Kickstall had heard the stories. The Corvins were raiders, conquerors who swept through peaceful systems and took what they wanted. They left nothing behind but empty worlds and scattered debris. The Vellani had always believed their remote location would protect them. They had been wrong. "Send the distress signal," Kickstall ordered, his voice shaking. "All frequencies, emergency channels, even the restricted ones." "Sir, the restricted channels lead to the quarantine zone. The Deathworld systems. No civilized species goes there. We're about to die," Kickstall said simply. "Civilized doesn't matter anymore." The message went out across the galaxy, a desperate plea from a species that had never learned to fight. It traveled through hyperspace relays, bouncing from system to system, growing weaker with each jump. Most civilized worlds received it and did nothing. The Galactic Council logged it as another tragedy they couldn't prevent. But one signal, transmitted on an old emergency frequency, reached a small blue world on the edge of known space. Admiral J. Park was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm sounded on the bridge of the UES Iron Dawn. At 45, he had seen more wars than most species saw in their entire history. His dark eyes held the weight of battles fought among asteroid fields and in the burning atmospheres of gas giants. Earth had made him hard, but it had also made him protective of those who couldn't protect themselves. "Sir, we're receiving an alien distress signal," reported Lieutenant Bo Kim from the communications station. "It's not directed at us specifically, but it's on our frequency." "Put it through," Jay ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had heard before. It warbled and clicked, translated by their computers into broken standard. "Help us, ... please, ... we are dying. Children in the water cities. No weapons, ... no soldiers, ... please." Captain Min Lee stepped forward, her uniform crisp, despite being awakened in the middle of the night cycle. "Sir, that's coming from outside the quarantine zone. We have strict orders not to interfere with alien conflicts." Jay studied the data scrolling across his screen. The Vellani were aquatic, peaceful, with technology focused on mining and terraforming rather than warfare. The Corvins were everything opposite, a militaristic species that had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. This wouldn't be a battle. This would be a slaughter. "How long since we last saw action?" Jay asked. 18 months, sir. The Proxima Rebellion. The crew's getting soft, Jay said, though there was no humor in his voice. "Navigation. Plot a course for the Vellani system. Full burn." "Sir," Min Lee protested. "The quarantine protocols exist for a reason. The other species fear us. If we break containment, they fear us because we win." Jay interrupted. "Those aquatic beings out there are about to learn what that means." He turned to face his bridge crew, each one a veteran of humanity's endless wars. "Send a message to the Third Fleet. Tell them to prepare for combat operations." "What about Earth Command, sir? Shouldn't we request permission?" Jay looked out at the stars, thinking of water cities filled with children who had never seen a weapon of war. "Sometimes you ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Prep the fleet, Captain. We're going to show the galaxy exactly why Earth builds warships." The Iron Dawn's engines roared to life, joined by the rest of the Third Fleet. 15. ships designed for one purpose, to bring Earth's particular brand of justice to an unjust universe. The Villani had called for help, and help was coming. The Corvins were about to discover why humans had been quarantined in the first place. The third fleet cut through hyperspace like a knife through dark water. 15 ships that had been built in Earth's orbital shipyards, forged from the metal of asteroids and powered by the fury of controlled fusion. Each vessel carried the scars of previous battles, dents in their armor plating from alien weapons, burn marks from energy beams that would have destroyed any other species' ships. Commander Tay Kim stood in the war room aboard the cruiser Steel Thunder, studying the holographic display that showed their destination. 12 Corvin dreadnoughts surrounded the peaceful world of New Saren, like wolves circling wounded prey. Each enemy ship was twice the size of his largest cruiser. By any reasonable military calculation, the humans were outnumbered and outgunned. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Hyan Park from the intelligence station, "we're getting more data on the Corvin fleet composition. Each dreadnought carries approximately 3,000 crew members, heavy plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and energy shields rated for sustained bombardment." "What about their tactics?" Tay asked, his fingers tracing the enemy formation on the display. "Standard Corvin doctrine, sir. They form a siege perimeter around the target world and demand surrender. If refused, they commence orbital bombardment until nothing remains alive on the surface." Lieutenant Na Shin looked up from her communications console, her young face pale with concentration. "Commander, I'm picking up more Villani transmissions. They're begging the Corvins to spare their children. They're offering to surrender their entire colony if the Corvins will just let the civilian transports escape." "What's the Corvin response?" Tay asked, though he already suspected the answer. "They're laughing, sir. They're actually laughing at them." A cold silence fell over the war room. Every human officer present had heard similar stories before. The galaxy was full of predators who preyed on the weak, and civilized species who turned away rather than get involved. That's exactly why Earth had been quarantined, because humans had a different response to bullies. Sergeant Wu Han, the fleet's tactical coordinator, pulled up enemy ship specifications on his screen. "Commander, standard engagement protocols suggest we should wait for reinforcements. 12-3 isn't good odds, even for us." Tay smiled grimly. "Sergeant, do you remember the Battle of Europa Station? How many Centauri raiders did we face there?" 27 ships, sir. But we had the station's defense platforms to help, and the Titan colonies. When the hegemony tried to take the mining platforms, Wu's expression changed as he caught on. 15 enemy vessels, sir. We had 5 ships. Exactly. And what happened in both cases? We won, sir. Decisively. The aliens out there don't understand something fundamental about humans," Tay continued, gesturing toward the display showing the Corvin fleet. "They think war is about having bigger ships and more firepower. They've never fought a species that evolved on a death world. They've never faced beings who had to fight for every scrap of food, every breath of air, every drop of water for millions of years." Na Shin received another transmission, and her hands trembled as she translated it. "Sir, the Corvins are broadcasting to the Villani colonies. They're giving them 1 hour to watch their world burn before they start hunting down the refugee ships." The war room erupted in angry murmurs. Even hardened soldiers had limits to what they could stomach. "How long until we reach the system?" Tay asked. 53 minutes, sir," reported the navigation officer. "Perfect timing." Tay turned to address his officers. "Send a message to Admiral Park on the Iron Dawn. Tell him the enemy is in position to commence planetary bombardment. Also send tactical data to all ships in the fleet." "Sir," Wu said, studying his screen, "the Corvin formation is actually quite sophisticated. They've positioned their heaviest ships to provide overlapping fields of fire. Any attacking force would have to run a gauntlet of concentrated weapons fire. That's their first mistake, Tay replied. They're thinking defensively. They're planning to sit there and pound a helpless planet into dust. They're not expecting anyone to actually fight back. Na's console chimed with an incoming message. Commander, Admiral Park is asking for confirmation. He wants to know if we're really planning to engage 12 dreadnoughts with just 3 cruisers. Tay looked around the room at his officers, men and women who had been forged in the fires of Earth's endless conflicts, who had learned warfare from the moment they could walk. Tell the Admiral that 12 Corvan ships versus 3 human ships sounds like acceptable odds. Tell him we'll see him on the other side. The fleet continued its burn toward destiny, carrying Earth's children toward another war. The hyperspace window tore open like a wound in space itself, and the human Third Fleet emerged directly into the heart of the Corvan formation. It was a maneuver that should have been impossible, dropping out of hyperspace with pinpoint accuracy inside. An enemy fleet required navigation skills that most species considered mythical. War Commander Vexhorn was reviewing bombardment coordinates for the Vellani cities when his tactical officer screamed, "Sir, unknown contacts. They're right on top of us." 15 human ships materialized around the Corvan dreadnoughts like hunters, surrounding their prey. The massive alien vessels, built for intimidation and overwhelming firepower, suddenly looked clumsy and slow compared to the sleek human warships that danced between them. Captain Jin Park stood on the bridge of the destroyer, Reaper's Edge, watching his targeting computer lock onto the Corvan flagship. At 32 years old, he had already fought in 7 major engagements across 3 star systems. His ship was smaller than any single Corvan vessel, but it had been built by a species that understood one simple truth: in space combat, speed and precision beat size and brute force. All weapons, target their command structure, Jin ordered calmly. Fire. The Reaper's Edge unleashed a salvo that would have been impossible for any other species to coordinate. Railgun rounds accelerated to 12% of light speed, followed immediately by plasma torpedoes that burned through space like miniature suns. The shots were so precisely timed that they hit the Corvan flagship simultaneously from multiple angles. Vexhorn watched in disbelief as his ship's shield's energy, barriers that could stop asteroid impacts, simply vanished under the human assault. Impossible. What kind of weapons are those? His communications officer, panic clear in his voice, managed to open a channel to the unknown vessels. This is War Commander Vexhorn of the Corvan Armada. Unknown vessels, you face the might of 12 dreadnoughts. Surrender immediately, or we will. The transmission cut off as a human railgun round punched through the flagship's command deck like it was made of paper. Emergency lights flashed throughout the ship as atmosphere vented into space. Admiral J. Park's response came on all frequencies. Broadcast in perfect Corvan standard. This is Admiral J. Park of the Human Third Fleet. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system and leave these people alone. Throughout the Corvan formation, alien commanders stared at their tactical displays in confusion and growing terror. The human ships moved like nothing they had ever seen, rolling, spinning, and diving through space with an agility that seemed to defy physics. Their weapons fired with mechanical precision, each shot calculated to inflict maximum damage while conserving ammunition. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Grixtel from the dreadnought Ironfang, "the enemy vessels are using kinetic weapons, solid projectiles. Who still uses such primitive technology?" "Primitive," his captain snarled. "Those primitive weapons just destroyed the Crimson Destroyer's entire port weapon array." On the human flagship Iron Dawn, Admiral J watched the battle unfold with professional satisfaction. The Corvans were making every mistake in the tactical handbook. They were trying to bring their big guns to bear on targets that refused to stay still long enough to be hit. Their formations, designed to maximize firepower against stationary targets, became a liability when facing enemies who could change direction faster than their targeting computers could track. "Admiral," reported Commander Tae Kim from the Steel Thunder, "enemy flagship is requesting terms. They want to negotiate." "Too late," Jay replied coldly. They had 30 seconds. They chose poorly. Lieutenant Na Shin, monitoring enemy communications, looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, I'm picking up internal Corvin transmissions. They're calling us death ships and ghost vessels. Their crews are panicking. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When the human weapons fell silent, 8 Corvin dreadnoughts were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The remaining 4 vessels were broadcasting surrender signals and requests for mercy. Captain Jin Park looked out at the debris field. That had once been the mighty Corvin Armada. "This is what happens when bullies meet predators," he said quietly to his crew. "The galaxy just learned why Earth builds warships instead of colony ships." On the surface of New Saren, millions of Valani emerged from their underwater shelters to see the human fleet holding position above their world. They had been saved, but they were beginning to understand that they had witnessed something unprecedented the moment when the galaxy's most dangerous species had chosen to become its protector. The age of Corvin expansion was over. The age of human protection had begun. The Corvin bombardment had lasted only 18 minutes before the human fleet arrived. But those 18 minutes had been enough to turn paradise into a nightmare. Captain Yu Kim stood on the landing platform of New Saren's capital city, watching his rescue teams move through the wreckage with practiced efficiency. Smoke still rose from the crater where the Corvin ships had targeted the main communication center, and the sweet smell of burning crystal trees filled the air. "Medical Team 2, Sector 7, you spoke into his communicator. We have survivors trapped under the collapsed transit hub." Around him, the Valani rescue workers watched in stunned silence as the humans went about their work. The planet's atmosphere contained enough methane to kill most species within minutes, but the human soldiers moved through it like they were breathing fresh mountain air. No environmental suits, no breathing apparatus, just standard military uniforms and the casual confidence of a species that had learned to survive anywhere. Elder Kickstall emerged from the emergency shelter beneath the city's central square, his blue-green skin pale with shock. The elderly Valani scientist had been coordinating the evacuation when the attack began, and now he found himself face to face with beings that defied everything he thought he knew about biology and physics. "Careful with that support beam," called out Sergeant Ho Lee as his team worked to clear debris from a collapsed school. "There are kids underneath." Kickstall watched in amazement as Ho simply grabbed the twisted metal beam, a piece of structural steel that would normally require heavy machinery to move, and lifted it like it weighed nothing. The human's muscles barely strained as he tossed the debris aside, revealing a group of young Valani huddled in a protective air pocket. "How?" Kickstall whispered to himself, but Ho heard him. "Gravity," Ho explained simply, gently lifting one of the injured children with hands that could have crushed stone. "Our world has 3 times the gravity of yours. What feels heavy to you feels light to us." The rescued children stared up at Ho with wide, frightened eyes. To them, he must have looked like a giant, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled power of a natural predator. But his touch was gentle as he checked them for injuries, and his voice was soft as he spoke reassuring words in their language. "We're going to get you out of here," Ho promised. "You're safe now." Across the ruined plaza, more human rescue teams worked with mechanical precision. They cut through solid metal with tools that seemed impossibly advanced, lifted massive chunks of debris that should have required teams of workers, and moved through the toxic atmosphere like it was their natural environment. Dr. Mina Song, the fleet's chief medical officer, was treating injured Valani in a makeshift field hospital. Her patients flinched whenever she came near, not from pain, but from an instinctive fear they couldn't explain. Every movement she made was controlled, purposeful, like a coiled spring ready to unleash devastating force. "Your bone structure is very different from ours," she explained to a patient whose arm had been broken in the collapse. "Much more delicate. I have to be very careful not to cause more damage." The patient, a young Vallani engineer named Kilmora, nodded nervously. "Doctor, may I ask, what kind of world did you come from? Your people seem so, strong." Mina paused in her work, considering how to explain Earth to someone who had never known hardship. "A difficult world," she said finally. "Everything there tried to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the ground beneath our feet. We had to become strong or we would have died out long ago." Elder Kickstall approached the medical station, his webbed feet making soft splashing sounds on the wet pavement. "Dr. Song, I must ask, what manner of beings are you? Your people moved through our poisoned air without protection. You lift objects. That should require industrial equipment. You speak our language perfectly after knowing of our existence for only hours." Ho Lee, having finished evacuating the school, overheard the question. He sat down carefully next to the elderly alien, mindful of his own size and strength. "We're the kind of beings you call when everything else fails," he said, not unkindly. "When the bullies come and the police won't help, you call the dangerous neighbors. But why did you come? We offered you nothing. We have no armies to assist you, no wealth to share." Ho looked out across the rescue operation, where his fellow humans worked tirelessly to save lives they had never seen before. "Because someone asked for help," he said simply. "That's what we do." As the day wore on, the Vallani began to understand the terrible bargain they had made. They had escaped one predator by summoning apex predators. The humans were kind, gentle even, but underneath that kindness lay a capacity for violence that could reshape the galaxy. The Vallani were safe now, but they would never again be innocent. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime had seen many crises over the past 1,000 years, but nothing like this. Representatives from 47 different species filled the circular amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electronic translations. Emergency session lights bathed the hall in red, signaling the most serious level of galactic alert. Counselor Murthic of the Zenthi Federation stood at the central podium, his 6 arms trembling as he held the report. "Fellow council members," he began, his translator struggling to convert his rapid speech patterns. "I have confirmed reports from the Corvan border. The human fleet. They destroyed 12 dreadnoughts in less than 5 minutes. The chamber erupted. Ambassador Kalanara, of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance, shrieked through her vocal slits. "Impossible. No species has that kind of firepower. The Corvans have conquered half the outer rim. The survivors are telling consistent stories," Murthic continued, raising his voice above the chaos. The humans appeared from hyperspace directly inside the Corvan formation. Their weapons punched through military-grade shields like they were made of cloth. They moved their ships like living creatures hunting prey. High Counselor Vexarin, the eldest member of the council, activated his personal shield to protect himself from the increasingly agitated crowd. "Order, order." His ancient voice boomed through the chamber's amplifiers. "If these reports are accurate, then the quarantine has been breached. The Deathworlders are no longer contained." The word Deathworlders sent a chill through the assembly. For 3 centuries, the Galactic Council had maintained the fiction that the Sol system was empty, that the reports of dangerous bipedal predators were just rumors spread by frightened traders. They had built an elaborate quarantine zone and told themselves it was for the protection of primitive life forms. Ambassador Crystal of the Hive Worlds buzzed angrily. "This is what happens when we allow sentiment to overrule logic. We should have sterilized that system when we first discovered them. And now it's too late," whispered Trade Minister Yorhad. My intelligence sources confirm that human ships are holding position over the Vallani homeworld. They're not leaving. They're protecting it. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humans were now operating outside their quarantine zone, if they were establishing protective zones around other species, then the entire balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. Counselor Murthok activated the main holoscreen. The human admiral has requested to address this council. Given the circumstances, I believe we have little choice but to listen. The hologram materialized in the center of the chamber, a human male in a dark blue uniform, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a warship. Admiral J. Park looked older than his 45 years, his eyes holding the weight of battles fought across light years of space. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, but underneath lay something that made every predator species in the Council unconsciously step back. Honored counselors, Jay began. I am Admiral J. Park, of the Human Space Force's 3rd Fleet. I want to make something very clear from the start. We didn't ask to be here. We were content to remain in our little corner of space, ignored and forgotten by your grand galactic civilization. Ambassador Kalanara found her voice. Then why did you break quarantine? Why interfere in affairs that don't concern you? Jay's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Because someone asked for help. The Vallani sent out a distress call, and we answered it. That's what civilized beings do when they hear someone screaming for help. The pointed criticism wasn't lost on anyone in the chamber. The Galactic Council had received the same distress call and chosen to file it away as another regrettable but unavoidable tragedy. You destroyed a sovereign military force, High Counselor, Vexiarn accused. The Corvin Armada was operating within their recognized territorial claims. The Corvin Armada was about to commit genocide, Jay replied flatly. We stopped them. If that makes us criminals in your eyes, then you need to take a long look at what your civilization actually stands for. Minister Yourhead leaned forward. What do you want from us, human? What are your terms? Jay was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words changed the galaxy forever. We don't want anything from you, but understand this. The age of human isolation is over. We will answer calls for help. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy can accept our protection, or you can learn firsthand why we were quarantined in the first place. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Outside the chambers, news of humanity's emergence was already spreading across trade networks and communication channels. The universe had become infinitely more dangerous for those who preyed on the weak, and infinitely more protected for those who simply wanted to live in peace. The balance of power had shifted, and there was no going back.